In this video, we're going to take a look at the fourth section of this chapter, named Achievement of the Goals of Planning. This section is made up of 9 points, each of which we will briefly discuss. They are as follows. Firstly, the increase in national income, followed by the increase in per capita income. Next, the rise in the rate of capital formation, institutional and technical change in agriculture, growth and diversification of industry, economic infrastructure, social infrastructure, employment, and international trade. Let's take a look at the first of these points, the increase in national income. In order to determine if the increase in national income was a direct result of the planning system, we should be able to notice observable differences in the rate of increase in GDP before and after partition. If you remember back to the previous chapter, the textbook mentioned that estimating the GDP was difficult because there were no proper records of GDP collected during the British rule. However, somehow, in this section, they estimate the GDP growth rate during that time at 0.5%. Although this single piece of data seems quite suspicious, what is not in doubt is that India's GDP was stagnant under British rule and that India was indeed a backwards economy. Once the period of planning began, the targeted growth rate for each period was 5%. And although the goal of 5% was not achieved in each 5-year plan, oftentimes the growth rate well exceeded 5%. Moreover, the median increase over these 12 plans is 5.4%, and it is clearly visible that the growth rate of GDP over these 5-year plans is trending upwards, which clearly indicates that the effectiveness of these 5-year plans with regards to increasing the GDP growth rate has indeed been a success. What is of particular importance to notice is that following the 8th plan, the GDP growth rate has been extremely significant. In fact, in the 11th plan, it was 8.2%, which is outstanding. With that said, one of the considerations of the long-term plans was to ensure that the per capita growth was also increasing. In that regard, taking a look at the increase in GDP per capita over the course of these 5-year plans, we notice that although there appear to be some inconsistencies in the growth rate, the median growth rate is 2.85%, which is a significant improvement over the nominal growth rates of growth under British rule. In order for you to have a more comprehensive understanding of how these first two topics relate to one another, I have graphed them next to each other. Although they are nowhere near identical, it's pretty obvious to see the similarities between them. They both immediately dip downwards during the early periods and then tend upwards to the right. Let's take a look at the rate of capital formation. Capital formation is a term used to describe the net capital accumulation, such as equipment, tools, transportation, assets, and electricity. Although we are not provided with a full series of data, the difference between the 1950s and today is quite significant. In fact, it has more than tripled over this period. The next topic, institutional and technical change in agriculture, is in an area where improvements in a wide number of areas are easily visible. Food grains have shown a 481% increase, while sugarcane has shown an outstanding 5,504% increase. Both of these imply that Britain was doing a terrible job of managing the agricultural output of India prior to partition. Looking at irrigated areas and cotton and jute, we can see similar results, as these have also increased by 479% and 636% respectively. Another area of exceptional growth was the growth and diversification of industry. Over the course of the last 2 plans, this has grown an outstanding 7.5%. This rate of growth is exceptional and should definitely be applauded. Moving on to one of the most important areas of growth, economic infrastructure, there are a number of different signs of the significant levels of improvement achieved over the course of the last half century. However, you should be careful when analyzing them. For instance, with regards to railways usage, although the number of passengers has increased by 655%, a significant proportion of that increase can be attributable to population growth. On the other hand, the 10,655% increase in power generation, although impressive mathematically, is extremely misleading because the level of power generation in 1950 was downright abysmal and was designed to service a country with much smaller energy needs. However, looking at social infrastructure measures, the results are far less ambiguous. In the case of the death rate, there has been a significant decrease, while the life expectancy has more than doubled. These results, while still below that of leading economies around the world, are far better than they once were and demonstrate that India is no longer a backwards economy. In terms of unemployment, recent data shows that the unemployment rate is falling, as it stood at 8.3% in 2004 to 2005 and was only 5.6% by 2011 to 2012. Generally speaking, an unemployment rate of 5% for a developing economy is quite an achievement, but this statistic alone does not tell the whole story because we need to know the participation rate before being able to offer a more comprehensive conclusion. Finally, we should expect a huge growth in international trade because prior to Britain's exit from India, India was somewhat of a closed economy. So, an astronomical result here is definitely proven through the data. To say that this increase, however, was a result of the planning process is somewhat misleading, because India was unable to trade with any other international partners other than Britain prior to partition. So, in summation, we have clearly seen that the textbook has highlighted 9 different areas of significant growth and attributed each of them to the success of the planning system. However, you should realize that some of these statistics are misleading. Some are inevitable, and some are a result of general circumstances. What cannot be denied, however, is that over the course of the plans, that some clearly visible signs of improvement have occurred in India. And these signs are not only economic in nature, but also social.